Well, it's official. Britain has a new Prime Minister. Former Interior Minister Theresa May is taking up residence in 10 Downing Street tonight. Queen Elizabeth formally entrusted her with forming a new cabinet a short while ago. Earlier, outgoing Prime Minister David Cameron urged his successor to maintain close ties with the EU, even whilst negotiating to exit the grouping. In his last appearance in Parliament, Cameron praised his government for generating one of the fastest growth rates among Western economies. The Conservative leader stepped down after Britons voted in on a June 23 referendum to quit the European Union against his wishes. May is the second woman to lead Britain after Margaret Thatcher. The 59-year-old has been Interior Minister for the past 6 years. She's expected to announce her cabinet choices today, including a minister to lead the process of quitting the EU.
She does talk about doing that.
Earlier today, Cameron presented his resignation to Queen Elizabeth at Buckingham Palace after leaving 10 Downing Street for the last time as Prime Minister. This is what he had to say.
When I first stood here in Downing Street on that evening in May 2010, I said we would confront our problems as a country and lead people through difficult decisions so that together we could reach better times. It's not been an easy journey, and of course we've not got every decision right.
All right, that was David Cameron earlier on, but let's cross now live and hear from the new Prime Minister.
Stabilised the economy, reduced the budget deficit and helped more people.
All right, okay. All right, we were hoping to catch the new Prime Minister live, but let's catch up with our correspondent in London, Dan Whitehead, who's busy watching the story for us. Dan, thanks very much for joining us. The new Prime Minister is speaking right now.
Yes, absolutely. Hopefully we'll be able to cross to Theresa May. But of course, she has in the last few minutes officially become the new Prime Minister of the UK. And it's a very old-fashioned pomp and ceremony process, as you've been explaining. She was driven from Buckingham Palace. She spent around 30 minutes or so with the Queen. The Queen asks formally Theresa May to form a government. And as the head of state, she is the only person in the country who can accept a resignation or hire a new PM. So that is what the Queen has done, fulfilling her role as the head of state, and Theresa May accepting that role to form a government and then being driven down to 10 Downing Street, where of course she will now carry out her duties. And what a set of duties that she has ahead of her, because she has got a full in-tray and pretty much every single item is urgent. She's got to reunite a party, although we've seen the Conservative Party come together today. A lot of backslapping, a lot of celebrations.
I'm going to stop you for a second because we can cross live to her now. Let's just catch some of what she's saying and we'll come back to you.
You're less likely than anybody else in Britain to go to university. If you're at a state school, you're less likely to reach the top professions than if you're educated privately. If you're a woman, you will earn less than a man. If you suffer from mental health problems, there's not enough help to hand. If you're young, you'll find it harder than ever before to own your own home. But the mission to make Britain a country that works for everyone means more than fighting these injustices. If you're from an ordinary working-class family, life is much harder than many people in Westminster realise. You have a job, but you don't always have job security. You have your own home, but you worry about paying the mortgage. You can just about manage, but you worry about the cost of living and getting your kids into a good school. If you're one of those families, if you're just managing, I want to address you directly. I know you're working around the clock. I know you're doing your best, and I know that sometimes life can be a struggle. The government I lead will be driven not by the interests of the privileged few, but by yours. We will do everything we can to give you more control over your lives. When we take the big calls, we'll think not of the powerful, but you. When we pass new laws, we'll listen not to the mighty, but to you. When it comes to taxes, we'll prioritise not the wealthy, but you. When it comes to opportunity, we won't entrench the advantages of the fortunate few. We will do everything we can to help anybody, whatever your background, to go as far as your talents will take you. We are living through an important moment in our country's history. Following the referendum, we face a time of great national change. And I know, because we're Great Britain, that we will rise to the challenge. As we leave the European Union, we will forge a bold, new, positive role for ourselves in the world. And we will make Britain a country that works not for a privileged few, but for every one of us. That will be the mission of the government I lead, and together we will build a better Britain.
All right, so that was Theresa May, Britain's new Prime Minister, speaking just outside her new home, 10 Downing Street in London. Let's cross back now to Dan Whitehead, who's been watching the day's activities. And Dan, I guess, you know, this is her first speech as Prime Minister. It was important to say the right things and set the tone for what she hopes will be a strong administration going forward.
Yeah, very interesting to hear the tone there, really addressing the disillusionment that we have seen from some grassroots voters in the UK who feel that Westminster, the bubble of Westminster and politics in London, is just so far removed from outside of the UK. And a lot of people say that disillusionment is what led to the Leave vote in the EU referendum. So we heard from Theresa May, they're really addressing how she'll be giving, her government will be giving people more control. When they pass new laws, it'll not be for the mighty, not for the wealthy, but for you, directly affecting those people who are working hard and want a better situation for themselves, saying that she will give the opportunities to everyone, whatever their background, and then summing up at the end a very positive image of what Brexit could mean after what we've seen a couple of weeks of real sort of downbeat messages about what this situation could evolve for the UK, that we're going through a period of great national change, we'll rise to the challenge, and that the UK will work not for the privileged few, but for all to create a better Britain. So there was a positive, upbeat message there from the new UK Prime Minister.
All right, but I would imagine that it's difficult for her to make a complete departure from what David Cameron had been doing. People are, I suppose, wanting some kind of continuance going forward, or will she do it her own way?
I think we're going to see Theresa May acting her own way. She's a very different politician from David Cameron, and that has been seen in the 6 years or so which she has been the Home Secretary, and she has been on the front line of politics for many years. But what she is not is someone who has held favours and held grudges. She's not someone really particularly who has a huge amount of friends within the government. She's not part of this Eton-Oxford set, which we have seen when it comes to Boris Johnson, George Osborne, David Cameron. They're all part of a clique, and Theresa May has not been part of that. And that independence from her has created the strength and the image which she has. So I think we will see a very strong Prime Ministerialship from Theresa May, and it will be a different style of politics, and we'll see that very soon. We expect tonight her to announce the leading cabinet ministers, so Chancellor, new Home Secretary, Foreign Secretary. May see an urgent shuffle in the next hour or so, and that will continue over the next few days, and I think we'll see a very different cabinet to what David Cameron had yesterday.
And people are saying that she's very strong for women, and that she may be pushing up the percentage from Cameron's 25 to as high as 50.
Yes, I think we will see many more women appointed to the cabinet. We may well see roles for Andrea Leadsom, of course, her opponent in that very short-run leadership campaign. We'll see if she is given a role. She will be under pressure to give roles not only to women, and we understand that is what she wants to do, but also to those who were campaigning for the UK to leave. Because, of course, Theresa May is a Remain campaigner. She wanted the UK to stay. And that is why she'll have a big chance to unify the party, because many Eurosceptic MPs in the Conservative Party are still unhappy that our new Prime Minister is someone who didn't want this Brexit to happen. She's had to push that message. We've heard it again from Theresa May today. Brexit means Brexit. She will have to carry out the mandate and the decision of that referendum. But a lot of people are keeping an eye on making sure that that Brexit isn't watered down.
All right, Dan, that's where we're going to have to leave it for the time being. But this is a running story. I think the bookies are possibly taking money now to see who is going to be in that cabinet. That's Dan Whitehead in London giving us an update on this breaking story that the country has a new Prime Minister. She's just spoken a short while ago.